We are so glad to have you with us on Marriage Talk. Thank you for subscribing and hopefully sharing the link with somebody else in your world, whether you're listening to us in podcast form or perhaps watching us on your YouTube channel. We'd love for these conversations to be distributed widely because we really think they have great value for helping married couples advance their relationship in a healthy way. Bill Hobson here, and as always, Jay and Laura Laffoon are with me. You can find out all of their information at jayandlaura.com. And today, Jay, I'm trying to guess what the threshold will be for the number of times we joke that we can't hear each other because our topic is the value of listening.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, there's one. I'm taking the over at 6. We'll see.
Yes.
Okay, so listening, it seems like sort of a natural thing to do. And it also seems like a huge whiff on the parts of many of us because we're not very good at listening. So
Well,
why is it that I can hear the things I want to hear, play-by-play calls, referees telling me that my tackle didn't report eligibly, and yet I often miss the very important elements that my wife is sharing with me. What am I missing here?
I saw a meme of an 8-year-old child defining the difference between listening and hearing. And the 8-year-old child said, listening is wanting to hear.
Nice.
Because we hear a lot of things, but what is it that we listen to? And that's really what we're talking about today, is that idea of not just hearing your spouse. I hear you, babe. I hear no, but listening to not only what's said, but what's behind what is said. And that is huge. We'll start with a perfect example. Laura's love language is quality time. Quality time, quality time. That's why we work together, we play together, we sleep together. Apparently she prayed for it and now she's got it. But years ago, I would play basketball at lunchtime. And I was on the road traveling, doing a lot of youth speaking on the weekends. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there was basketball at his place at lunchtime. So I'd go play basketball. Well, I had been gone a number of weekends in a row and came home late one Sunday night. And the next morning I got up, packed my bag, went to his place at lunch, and I wasn't there 10 minutes. In fact, the first game had ended, we had won, so we got to stay on the court, and in walks Laura. And I said, hey, babe, what's up? I was wondering if you wanted to go to lunch. And I said, well, not really, because we just won and I get to stay on the court. It's like, oh, I thought maybe you might have wanted to go to lunch. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And I saw her face and the anguish that was on her face as she turned to walk out. And I was like, okay, dude, don't be an idiot. Do not be an idiot. She wants to go to lunch. So I said, wait. And she stopped. And I said, let me grab my stuff. And I grabbed my stuff. I'm in sweaty gym clothes. I throw a sweatsuit on over and we went to lunch. Why? Because for one of the first times in my life, I didn't just hear what she said. I was listening to the message behind the story. And
which was, you've been gone, dude. Let's go to lunch.
Yeah. Yes. I need to connect with you on a quality time level. And I knew that if I wanted to connect with her a little later that night, that I needed to connect with her on her level first. And it really is, there's always context. Everything is said with context. What's the context behind this? And the challenge is that men and women have different contexts because we talk about different things. Men tend to talk about
facts and
activities.
And women talk about people and feelings. And both, when Jay talks about facts and activities, I'm just like, roll my eyes. I'm going to hear the umpteenth different way he could see that he missed that putt on number 7. I mean, dude, you hit the ball, you missed it. It didn't go in. But, he's got 15 different reasons why it didn't.
NBC's looking for a new color analyst for their golf broadcast, Laura. Just saying. That description right there was spot on. Dude, you hit the putt, you missed it.
Let's be Johnny Miller and state the obvious, huh? Sorry.
But
Jen.
women don't want to hear about facts and activities, and men don't want to hear about people and feelings.
So-
But
Here's a couple of examples.
Yeah.
You know, you do a Church Pew Sports podcast,
Yeah.
right? Did you talk about the Lions win this
did.
last?
At
Did you
great
talk
length.
about, did you ask the question, what do you think Jared Goff felt about his win? No, we don't ask that question. We know how Jared Goff felt. He was elated. He was excited. He was on top of the world. We don't ask, how do you feel about, no.
I was more interested in the way Kelly Stafford felt about the Lions booing Matthew Stafford and the kids. That,
See,
whatever. I'm a Lions fan, but
she's also a Matthew Stafford
I'm also
fan.
a Matthew Stafford fan.
Poor Kelly. Poor
No,
Kelly.
they
Her,
booed the
feel-
girls.
her feelings
They
were hurt.
booed those little girls.
For the record,
Things were hurt.
for the record,
But
Miss
see, that's
Kelly-
why.
Miss Kelly thankfully came out later and said, well, actually, they were just booing me, which is
Right.
true because you're very annoying. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, so on your guys' podcast about sports,
Yeah.
we don't talk about people and feelings. Now we might say, Miggy had a great last year of before he retired, whatever. But we're not talking about Miggy. We're talking about his legacy. You know what I'm saying? It's a big difference. And the fact that he had a decent year.
Although we are talking about what the Lions, how they're making us feel because of the long, I'm seeing guys who are older than me. I'm seeing them in tears
Oh, yeah.
with one playoff win.
Yep, that's right. So the other flip side of that was a number of years ago, I was invited to go pheasant hunting in South Dakota. Now, this is the pheasant hunting capital of the world, and I am not a hunter, but I was convinced to go because my friend said, Jay, this is one of the best guy times you will ever have. And it was. Because it's the laws in South Dakota, you can't start hunting till 10 a.m. So that means you get to sleep in. We would eat a big breakfast. We would go out at 10 a.m. and we would shoot till about 1. We'd come back, we'd eat a big lunch. We'd go out and shoot in the afternoon. We'd come back and eat a big dinner. And at night, we'd sit around the campfire and tell stories that didn't exist. That's what, that's what we'd do. And I had a ball. It really was a lot of fun. And when I got back, Laura had a couple questions for me. And the first one was, how did it feel to kill a bird? And I'm like, I never thought about how it felt to kill a bird because I knew we were going to be eating that bird that night. That was what I was concerned about, was eating that bird. And then the other question was, well, what did everyone wear?
Okay, now there was a reason why I asked that question.
What would that reason be?
That reason was, I'll tell you, because I am married to a man who's not a hunter.
Yep.
And we had to spend 2 hours at Jay's Sporting Goods finding just the right clothes to wear to the hunting thing. So, I wanted to make sure he was dressed.
Did you fit in with the other people?
I was the one that needed 2 hours figuring out what I was wearing.
Being ostracized in the wilds of South Dakota would be a very tough situation. And I remember also, for those of you who have listened to Marriage Talk since the beginning, you'll know that the first few seasons we did with Terry Ladico and myself. And Terry and his wife Sandy have a wonderful counseling practice in Midland, Michigan called Covenant Counseling. And Terry introduced me to the concept of what he calls bidding, the bid process. What does that look like? It looks like where let's say the husband says to the wife, did you see that sunset? And it's not because she's never seen a sunset before, it's because he wanted her to see it with him, right? So that was the bid. You could be a little more obvious with all of it, and you might, perhaps the wife is walking through the living room right around bedtime while he's glued to the TV, but she's walking by wearing something that would indicate TV should not be his highest priority. And she's making this bid where if he's playing basketball and she walks in and says, would you like to go to lunch? That's a bid, right?
Yep.
He talks at length about how the only way to appropriately address the bid and accept the invitation is if you're listening.
Right.
if you're not listening, it sounds like, hey, would you like to stop playing basketball because you guys just won and maybe go grab a burger? But if you're listening, as you described, Jay, you're hearing, oh, somebody wants to spend time with me. And it sounds like it's really pretty special, pretty important, right?
Yep.
I am the king of missing bids, which probably directly relates to somewhere being the court jester of not listening very well. I think it all
That's
ties
also
into
because
our main
we
topic.
talk about different things. So her bid might not be in a language that you understand all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
And now that's not taking responsibility away from you, because we have to learn.
No,
This is
take
one of
take it away from me, please.
the- No, because we have to learn our spouse. I think that's one of the beautiful things about long-term relationship, is that when we're dating and when we're engaged, we're constantly trying to find out more and more and more about our spouse. We're like, oh my goodness, what's your favorite ice cream? Oh, did you ever see this movie? Oh, it's my favorite movie too. You're constantly digging and mining for ways to connect. And then so often when we get married, we don't feel like we have to do that, or we stop doing that. And that's part of the fun, is that digging and finding out, what is it that really makes them tick? What is it that really drives them? What is it that motivates them in life?
And caring about what they care about. That's
the
important.
big one, is really caring about the things that your spouse cares about, because chances are you don't. Chances are you don't care about those things. But when you show your spouse that you are willing to care, it makes a huge difference. I'll give you an example. Laura grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. She and her friends every Saturday, and by every Saturday, I mean every Saturday,
As teenagers.
would go to a different mall in Atlanta. There were dozens of them, and they would go to a different mall. And as teenagers, they would spend the day at the mall. They'd get Chick-fil-A for lunch. They'd spend the day, and then that was what they did on Saturday. Well, when she moved to Michigan, and specifically Alma, Michigan, we had two malls within an hour. One was in Saginaw, one was in Lansing. And neither of them were really, really good malls. They were just malls. And she always wanted to go to the nice malls in Detroit and Grand Rapids. Well, now we're talking a whole day. We're not just going to the mall. We're talking an entire day to drive there, go there. And at first, Bill, I'll be honest, I would turn into a jerk. I would let her know that this is the last place I want to be. This is a waste of our time. It's a waste of our money. I can't believe you've dragged me here for the whole day. Until, I don't even remember when it was, but at some point, some wise person said to me, does your wife find joy there? Yeah. So why are you squelching her joy? Why are you taking that away? And so I made a small change and just decided that I was going to look for the things that she found joyful, to listen for the things that she found important, and to hear what she was saying about those things. And so did I still enjoy going to the mall? No, but I
Still doesn't.
I still don't, but I enjoy watching her do those things. And it was because I started listening to what was important to her. And it's not going to the mall. Come to find out, it's spending money is what it is.
I didn't spend a lot of money.
No, she didn't.
But on the flip side of that, one of Jay loves sports, golf, football, whatever. And even just last weekend, as we were watching the Lions win, and our son was here, we were having conversation. I was spouting off all kinds of facts about this player, that player, this player. Jay's like, she knows more about football than I do. Why?
I love this woman.
Because I've made a point to read newspaper articles, to watch on Facebook, to read all the stuff out there so that I can have a conversation, a knowledgeable conversation with him when we're watching the Lions or when we're watching golf, or, the other sports and stuff. And I've made a concerted effort to make sure that I can have a conversation
Best wife ever.
that makes me understand what he's talking about, and I can act like I'm knowledgeable.
Although she still doesn't know what a Tampa 2 defense is.
I don't care about that. I just want to know what positions they play out there.
We can let that one slide. That's
Yes, we can.
that's tough to diagram up on the whiteboard. What are you hearing from couples about this issue of listening, and what what does, is it mostly a gender divided opinion about how good spouses are at this? Or is there a wish list that couples, I wish that he was
I-
better this way?
I don't know that it's so much gender as
Right.
much as it is personalities. Because I know listening to couples, talking to couples, a lot of men are really good listeners. And a lot of women really just don't care. They want to do their, so I don't know that it's necessarily, at least when we were growing up and getting married, it was kind of this social construct that women are the good listeners and men aren't. And I don't think it's so much men and women as much as it is your personality, and the way that you operate within your marriage.
We've got a friend, he's a doctor, and he is the most tuned in person when it's one-on-one conversations that I've ever met. And it doesn't matter if he's talking to a man or a woman. If you're in a room of 16 to 2,000 people and you're talking to Matt is talking 100% solely to you. That's a gift, or a gift that he's been given. Not everyone has that gift, but we can certainly learn from that, because when you, one of the great, and I will keep quoting this guy, is it Joey Odom?
Yes.
Our friend Joey, who talks about when you've got this in your hand, 4 billion people can get in touch with you. But when you put this down and move it away, and you talk to your spouse or your child or your friend, and you really are talking to just them, what are you communicating? You are the most important person in my world right now. And that's huge. And I think that's what really listening does for a couple, is it lets them know TV's off, phone's out of my hand, there's no radio on where I'm tapping my foot to the radio. I really want to know what you have to say right now. And it's a lifesaver. It breathes life into marriage.
It's why it's one of the habits that we try and encourage, and it's a drum that we beat with couples all the time, is to set aside 15 minutes every day of uninterrupted conversation, where you just sit over a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, whether it's first thing in the morning or at night before you go to bed.
Or in the hot tub once you get
Yeah.
off work, whatever it might be.
Kids are in bed, kids aren't around, kids are in front of a TV, whatever it is, take all your distractions away, including phones and TVs, and just sit and have a conversation for 10 or 15 minutes. How was your day? What went on today? So what about this? What about that? And the more that you build that habit into your marriage, the better your listening skills become. And then it becomes I want to hear about this in your life. And I want to hear about this, and I want to hear about that person. And I want to hear about this activity. You begin to build that desire of wanting to hear.
So we wrote a book called He Said, She Said, and we asked over 1,000 couples, what do you need to hear from your spouse? And we came up with 4 phrases that every husband needs to hear from his wife. And
As a
4
result
phrases,
of those
as a result of the survey, 4 phrases every wife needs to hear from her husband. But then we threw in a random question. Don't even know why we did it. At the end of the survey, we said, if you could change one thing about the opposite sex, what would it be? And it was uncanny how the percentages, it was like 96% of the men answered the same and 97% of the women answered the same. And when we asked the women what they would change about most men, it was that they would become more aware. And I'm like, okay.
I'm not aware of what you're talking about.
Exactly. But how women can sense everything that's around them. Their senses pick up everything, whereas our senses tend to be more in a box. In other words, I can
Right in front of me.
Yep,
Right.
right. And so, that's a valid thing, that if we could work on becoming more aware of when she, gets a haircut, when she's put on a special dress or
When she needs
outfit,
help to do this, that, or the other
when she
thing.
needs help with the kids or the dishes, when she's in a bad mood because of something we've said, done, or our mere existence. Sometimes that's what will cause us to be in trouble. And then the men, and again, it was men wish that women would stop complaining. And that one was huge because women don't see it as complaining, but men hear it as complaining. Oh, I wish I had the vacuum cleaner that so-and-so had, or I wish we were able to, be part of this club or that club, or I wish, and this isn't a woman in her mind complaining, but to her husband who wants to provide everything he can for her, it's like, well, I'm not good enough. And so to really guard our words as well as being aware of what's around us is great advice for both husbands and wives, because we don't always know, true confession. My tone of voice for 2 decades plus in our marriage
Plus.
was something I didn't realize was a big deal, but I could just crush Laura with my tone of voice and not realize.
Same here. I got one of those last week, as a matter of fact. So
Yeah. And so again, that's us not being aware
yeah.
that what's going on right here, there's some feelings attached to that. And then the whole idea of, if you could just say it a little different, in my dreams, I wish this could happen. In a perfect world, I wish this could happen. Well, thank goodness we don't live in a perfect world, because that's never going to happen, but that whole idea of really understanding the gift of God that he has given us in our spouse, and cherishing that to the point of sacrificing a little bit of ourselves to really listen and not just hear what's going on.
It's so good. I'm glad you said that. And I'm reminded that when I don't truly listen, I tend to assume what I heard was negative. It's not usually the case,
Right.
but it's because I didn't really listen to what was either behind it or the context around it, but I just heard the phrase or the sentence. And part of that comes from probably in the business world, away from my marriage, where you're exchanging emails that are flying around left and right, and there's a text that comes in here, and there's no nuance or any sort of emotion behind what you're reading on your phone. Or so if you've come off of a day of that kind of communication, you've got to remind yourself, okay, now we're making eye contact. I really love this person. This person's, not trying to sell me something, and I'm not trying to sell them anything. This is just us. And I need to pay attention, because this is no longer the truncated conversations that I've just spent the last several hours being engaged in. And like I said, if I'm, and I'm not great at this, but if I'm not listening intentionally, then I probably default to the less than positive interpretation of what was just said to me.
And the reality is, we go back to when we fell in love. You fell in love for a reason. And yes, there were hormones involved, and yes, there was attraction involved, but there was something more. And it was that person that I fell in love with. And that person is still there, has grown, has matured, has developed, and has value in getting to know them better. And the only way that we can do that is if we truly listen to one another. Do
you have any listening exercises that you advise couples to take part in? Is there something that somebody's listening right now and they're like, we're not very good at this? And
I'm sorry, could you say that again? My phone.
Exactly.
Just kidding.
I would say the 15 minutes of
of
uninterrupted conversation. And even if it's just a recap of the day, start with the simple stuff, so what did you do today? What did you have to do at work? What did the kids do? Just kind of asking open-ended questions, not yes and no's, but open-ended questions. And really, that's why the phone has to go away. The TV has to be off. The kids need to be either in bed or put them in front of a TV for 15 minutes. It won't hurt them. But really having that eye-to-eye contact and conversation.
And I do think there's a lot of helps out there on how to manage your screen time.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of people, it's not just the phone, but it's the television, it's the iPad, it's the, I'm on Pinterest, finding the next recipe that I'm going to cook, or I'm on Facebook looking for the next joke that I want to hear. There's some tools out there. Specifically, I think reading books, again, we're authors, but reading books on marital communication is something that will really light bulb you. You know, for example, our He Said, She Said book, we got 4 phrases, and I'm telling you, fellas, these 4 phrases will unlock the keys to the kingdom. Because every woman wants to hear these from her husband. And it's not difficult, and you can say them in all sincerity. And the same for the phrases that the ladies say to the husband. But there's a lot of great books out there where, you know, it's not an easy fix. It's not oh, well, here, let me take this pill and now I'm a good listener. I wish. But we do have some snake oil that'll do that for you.
There is one phrase you can use when you're having a conversation, especially about feelings or what's going on in your marriage, to always, you know, so what I hear you saying is, and repeat back what you heard to clarify if that's what they were actually saying. So what I hear you saying is the words that I used, you know, whatever that might be, but using that phrase. So what I hear you saying is fill in the blank. That'll help you clarify whether you heard it correctly, they spoke it the way they meant to, you know, that type of clarification.
And most of the time I get, no, ding dong, that's not what I was saying. You know, let me clarify. Because I do have a thick
No,
skull.
I didn't mean it that way.
We were
That's-
actually on a speakerphone call with my accountant, my CPA, because I considerably messed up bookkeeping over the last year in QuickBooks. I just made some errors. I duplicated entries and all this kind of thing, and it led to just a mess. And so I had Ellen on one side of the table, I'm over here, speakerphone, and we've got the pieces of paper in front of us and the accountants. Now she's describing in her lingo the things that need to happen. And it's stuff that I literally don't understand. I mean, she's talking about the S Corp and the receivable and the thing. And I'm like, okay, you got to slow down. I need to go back to first grade. In fact, we may need to go back even before that, maybe preschool. And I just need you to make sense out of all this. And as we are sitting here for the last 27-ish minutes talking about listening, I just realized that I probably asked my accountant more questions about what she was saying than I have my wife in quite some time. So now I've got to go and kind of at least get off the scales a little bit.
If you want supper tonight, that's for sure.
Yes, very good. So what you're saying is the tomatoes are in it?
Yes. I never do.
Yeah, well, it's good stuff. And we have not begun to explore the full impact of quality listening and interaction. And that's what all these weeks ahead hopefully will entail as we continue on this journey of trying to help your happily ever after years be even better than you thought they could be. So make sure you check out some of the resources, the books that Jay and Laura have referred to at jayandlaura.com. And join us on social media or on our website at marriagetalk.org. We would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your comments, your questions. And I think one of the coolest ways for us to shape future topics on the podcast is in response to the things that you have to share. So please feel free to share them. Thanks for listening. And Jay, I've heard you say something about dinner, so now I'm going to go have it.
Very good, Bill. Enjoy.